Welcome to JCATS, a program that seeks to introduce Japanese contextualized literature and ideas for use by missionaries and anyone that seeks to share the gospel with Japanese people.
日本人から聞く日本のキリスト教。
Yeah. Welcome to JCATS. Been a while. So I recorded this like 3 weeks ago, and I was like, sorry for the long summer. And then I listened to it, and I was making all kinds of mistakes with the words that I was saying, and so I had to redo it. But I think it's gonna work. We'll see. Also, while I'm at it, I will remind the listener that there is an email address for this project. It is, it's my alternate email address. I'm the only one that gets the emails, and I'm just trying to make sure I know what that email address is. It's jcatsjapan@gmail.com. So if you enjoy the show, if you have any questions that you think I could address, if you have a topic in mind that you would like to see addressed, no guarantees. I'm not an expert. I just read stuff. I've lived here for a long time. I'm married to a Japanese woman, etc. I like Japanese contextualization. And if I can offer an answer on something that's not going to take me forever to research, unless it's really interesting, then I'd like to do that. I've gotten some encouraging emails from listeners that I really appreciate. So thank you. So there were 4 articles about Japan on Christianity Today. 4 articles that were part of a single interview. A lot of times when you hear about global Christianity and you go to the Asia section, there's almost nothing about Japan, right? But Christianity Today has been publishing articles on Japan that I've been kind of keeping an eye on, and I thought that's really cool because to me it seems like most of the writers, or all of the writers really, that I've seen publish articles on Japan either have PhDs or are currently pursuing PhDs. So I think that's cool because we're seeing some recognized thinkers, I guess, talking about Japan in a international context. So that's cool. I wanted to talk about the articles, which are an extended interview. The interviewee is Tokyo Christian University's International Mission Center Director, Yoichi Yamaguchi. And then the interviewer / article writer is Kazusa Okaya, researcher, PhD candidate in theology at Durham University. So yeah, I saw this and I was pretty excited to read it. Read these 4 articles. The 4 articles which you can see at Christianity Today. The articles are Shinto's Key Teachings, Shinto's Historical and Contemporary Influences on Japanese Society, Christianity and Shinto, and What Christians Should Know About Shinto, which I thought was very relevant to the Japanese context, which I like to talk about with you all. So I'm gonna read a few quotes, do a few summarizations of parts of those articles, and then try and give you a little bit of my thoughts on some of that stuff. Nothing to where I would be like, oh yeah, I totally disagree with this guy or anything like that. Just maybe add a little nuance that I find, and some places that you can look if you want to dig deeper into some of the things that are talked about. So I think, at least when I went over this stuff, I thought that I was going through the articles in order. I'm like 50% sure I went over the articles in order, so this is how I'm going to address the articles. The first article that I wanted to look at was Shinto's key teachings. So what is Shinto? Yeah, that's a tough one. It almost feels like it's an intentionally tough one. Like Shinto doesn't really want to be like defined. That's something that is brought up in sociology books, I guess. I'm not sure what to call them. Japaneseness books, right? That's actually a distinctive of Shinto, and that's something that Japanese people tend to struggle with about Christianity, is just how systematized Christianity is, and you've got your dogmatics, and you've got your creeds, and you've got your councils, and Shinto is like, no, we don't really do any of that stuff. We just sort of are. I'm sorry, that's just my commentary on it, but I'll get back to the article now. So here's a quote from the article. As the earliest religion in Japan, Shinto could have been practiced as far back as the Jomon period, 10,500 to 300 BC. It developed over time by absorbing influences from other traditions and religions, such as Buddhism and Confucianism. Shinto is the indigenous religion of Japan, which emphasizes the nature and worship of various deities, kami. The deities reside in various natural phenomena and objects, and Japanese people believe that all things possess the divine spirit. End quote. And so what are some sort of things that are in Shinto? Parts of Shinto would include ancestor veneration, ritual purity, the lack of a formal doctrine, harmony with nature, and then an emphasis not on divine human harmony like in Christianity, but human nature harmony. Historically, Buddhas, enlightened humans, and Shinto kami have been seen to represent the same entities, perhaps the same ancestral spirits and such. So it was an easy pair of religions for the Japanese to accept syncretistically. So that's just a real, let's see, brief summary of that first article. These are 4 articles, but it's an interview edited and then presented in 4 articles. So they're short articles. From the second article, as I saw it, as I chronologized it, Shinto's historical and contemporary influences on Japanese society. Quote, while the Japanese imperial household conducts official Shinto rituals using the state budget today, Shinto was never officially declared the national religion in the country. The next quote I have is the Imperial Rescript on Education, a key ideological document of the Meiji state published in 1890, reflected how influential and pervasive Shinto was in society. Skipping down, Japanese people at the time treated the Rescript as a sacred text because they thought the emperor, as a supreme being, had absolute authority. In 1891, one notable conflict between Christianity and state ideology emerged in what is known as the Disrespect Incident. Kanzo Uchimura, a prominent Christian leader and public school teacher, was censured for refusing to bow to the document containing the Rescript. Skipping down. Over time, however, both state and church leaders came to insist that Christianity and state Shinto were not in conflict and could coexist. From 1930 the Japanese government began asserting that Shinto and imperial worship were only expressions of Japanese culture and identity rather than religious acts that conflicted with Christian beliefs. This view slowly gained traction among the majority of Christian leaders who thought it would make evangelism easier. End quote. And then the article goes on to cite some modern examples of Shinto. For example, a company may bring their employees to a shrine at New Year to buy a blessing. I used to box in a boxing gym before I got married many years ago. I was a single missionary, and I used to hang out by myself a lot, and I used to watch Hajime no Ippo, which is a boxing anime. And then I noticed that there was a boxing gym in my neighborhood, so I signed up and boxed with them for like a year. And at New Year's there would be like this kind of arrow-looking totem, I don't know, little thing that was like attached to like a piece of paper that was a blessing from the local shrine. When my kids were playing on the local baseball team, both teams that my son played for would go to a shrine at the beginning of the year and do like a blessing. Oh, one time the team that was like the grade between my two kids, so like it was the same team, but they had like a 6th grade team and like a 4th grade team. And then so one of the off years of my two kids, the team was like not doing good. They were doing bad. And the team, like Daihyo, like the manager of the team, went to a shrine and purchased a purification for the team because they kept losing, which I thought was funny. Again, because my kid wasn't on that team. He was on the younger team, and my other kid had already graduated, so it was funny. But yeah, that's, did he really think that was going to stop his team from losing? Spoiler alert, it didn't. But maybe, I don't know. But the point is, it was interesting to me that he went through the process of doing that. Yeah. There was a TV program that mentioned in the article called Lucky Shrine Walks, which was on NHK. So that was talking about walks at shrines, which make you lucky. It talks about omatsuri, summer festivals that have traditionally been held at shrines, but increasingly they're held in other locations. I've seen a number of them in city streets. One of our local one is held at it's the Jieitai Matsuri, so it's the Self-Defense Forces Matsuri. That's the one time of the year that just our regular city people go into the Self-Defense Force base so that we can buy festival food and do the little lottery game where the kids inevitably get plastic swords that they can hit each other with. And there's some dancers and stuff. So, yeah, our local omatsuri is in the self-defense force base, not in the shrine. There's probably some in the shrine, but usually those spill out in the streets too. Anyway, yeah, no, they're definitely still related to shrines, but not all of them, and increasingly they kind of spill out into the regular society. Yeah. The third article, Christianity and Shinto, asks, how did Japanese Christians and churches historically engage with Shinto? Quoting from the article, when the first Protestant missionaries came to Japan in the mid-19th century, they taught that Shinto shrines are idolatrous. Early Japanese Christians accepted this posture, and they refused to participate in Shinto practices like worshiping at a local shrine. But through these repeated conflicts with Shinto beliefs, Japanese Christians began to rethink whether traditional Shinto values such as ancestral worship and emperor veneration were truly incompatible with the Christian faith. The earliest Protestant communities in Japan, such as the Yokohama Band, the word band describes a small group of Christians, and its Yokohama Church, comprised individuals who were deeply informed by nativist kokugaku scholarship. Their embrace of Christianity was not a conversion out of a heritage that cherished the Japanese ethos, including Shinto, but rather a reinterpretation of it. So at this point, I will refer you back to some of our earliest episodes of JCATS, like second and third, or second, third, and fourth. I don't remember. I kind of think we did 3 episodes with a friend of mine he's a professor teaching New Testament in Japan at some of the larger universities and seminaries. I'm not going to say which ones or which one, etc. But if you go back to, like, again, the second or third, I think it's Japanese Protestant History with Professor Kai, I think is the article or the podcast / YouTube. You can freshen up on the Yokohama Band, the Kumamoto Band, and I think the Sapporo Band. I think those were the 3 big, like, first generation Protestant Christian groups in Japan, like 150 years ago. Yeah. Or you can read this book, which is called A History of Japanese Theology, edited by Yasuo Furuya. And this is something that I've read, and this is something that I noticed when I was talking with Kai about Japanese history. He brought his own copy to reference while we were doing the interview. So it's a real good resource if you want that information about those early years of Japanese Protestantism. Or you could, just not, I don't know. But if you're interested, that's my recommendation. Further quotes from the article. Christian thinkers had various degrees of closeness with Shinto / No, this is not a quote from the article. This is my summary, right? Christian thinkers had various degrees of closeness with Shinto / Japaneseness. So, for example, Uchimura, who was mentioned, he's very well-liked by a broad swathe of Protestants and evangelicals today. He liked Bushido. I believe that the actual book Bushido was written, I think, by a Christian, though it wasn't sort of written as like, aha, we're Christians. It was more like, these are things that are Japanese, and by the way, they're also kind of Christian. As something that I thought that I had heard. You can read the book and tell me what you think. Ebina Danjo was another early thinker. He's mentioned in the article. He wanted to have a closer, like, Japanese Shinto / Christian kind of fusion. He comes up in the book, The History of Japanese Theology. It's hard to not, like, read a list of like 20 theologians and then, like, pick ones that you feel good about and ones that you don't feel good about. And Danjo was one that I didn't feel super great about. But again, you can read it. Yeah. I mean, when I say I don't feel super great about it, I would say that just he doesn't really, I don't think basically any Protestants today, or really Catholics or Orthodox for that matter, because Danjo was a Protestant. But I think most Protestants today wouldn't really want to claim this guy very much because of his closeness with Shinto. Yeah. Also, though, the article points out that really wasn't so uncommon back in that time, the sort of pre-war time. And probably it was fueled by just sort of a national, and even beyond Japan into Asia, a desire to avoid becoming a Western colonial vassal. which is also a prominent reason given by Japan for starting stuff in World War II. I'm not really here to talk about any of the, justifications for any of that stuff. I'm just saying that it seems like that idea of not wanting to be colonized was not just on the minds of imperialists, but also Christians who were becoming increasingly imperialistic in those days. Yeah, so that's something that that I think a big reason why modern Christians in Japan really post-World War II Christians in Japan are very skeptical of contextualization in their own country is because in the 20s and 30s there was a strong push for a Japanese Christianity, which meant imperialism, which is bad, especially in the case of specifically in the case of Japanese imperialism. We all know what happened during World War II, and that's not something that Christians should be cozying up to, which is a warning that Yamaguchi gives at the end of the article. Post-World War II Christian departure. So after the war, Christians repented in Japan, and they wanted nothing to do with that stuff anymore. More recently, according to the article, Christians and an ethic of mutual non-disruption is cited, but that Japanese Christians are a little more accommodating. The emperor has sort of undergone a makeover from like supreme deity to moral exemplar, according to the article, which I get. I've even heard that the emperor that retired a few years ago, people say that his wife is a Catholic, which is tough to be recognized as a Christian when you're also recognized as the descendant of the sun goddess Amaterasu, right? So it's kind of tough to be representative of both of those religions. But again, I think it seems like a lot of even Christians in Japan today look at the emperor, especially the older one that's still alive. I think he's still alive, but he's retired, as just a very, very moral guy, instead of like it's dangerously Shintoistic or something. Yeah, but again, Yamaguchi finishes the article by warning that Christians shouldn't get too comfortable getting too cozy with Shinto. What I understood to be the final article, what Christians should know about Shinto, seems to be a summary of the other three articles, I think. Maybe I can... I'm actually hoping, honestly, at some point to interview the guy that interviewed this guy. So the person answering the questions again in this interview is a professor at Tokyo Christian University, Yamaguchi, Yoichi, but the person who wrote the article and has written at least one other article for Christianity Today. I started with a Japanese naming convention, so we'll go Okaya Kazusa, I believe. I mentioned that Kai did some interviews for us about Japanese history, Japanese Protestant history, the older episodes of JCATS. And I think he and Kai are related, not like marriage related, not like blood related, which is kind of fun. So maybe that's an easy way for me to convince Okaya to talk to me about stuff. I know he does some other research and stuff. It's fun and interesting. Yep. Maybe another day. Finishing off, again with this last article, while Yamaguchi is encouraged by this openness to engage with Shinto and Japanese culture, he believes Christians should also be aware of the ways in which the Japanese church has historically been compromised by them. And he finishes with, respect and critique must walk together, he said. Only then can real understanding begin. End of the last article. So I liked those articles. Something that it, obviously the warning is that we shouldn't go too far with our contextualization. I guess as a guy who puts a lot of time into Japanese contextualization, and really the whole point of this podcast is to convince missionaries and to assist missionaries in being as contextual as possible. I would say I agree that we don't want to be syncretistic. We don't want to be imperialistic. But I think there's still room to be contextual. And where I see like a really positive direction for that is, I guess you have to say, what is that distinctly Japanese quality that we're trying to use to reach Japanese people with Christianity? Is it Shinto? Because that will be problematic, obviously. Or is it like a Japanese thought, right? And then I think you have kind of a like a chicken egg thing. So like if the root is Shinto and out of that root springs forth Japanese thought, and we're trying to use that Japanese thought to reach Japanese people for Christianity, yeah, you could argue that that's also problematic because the root fruit connection is not good. I think the book that was the most helpful to me in understanding Japanese thought, like I've become fairly comfortable in my understanding of Japanese thought as it was presented in Kosuke Nishitani's Understanding Japaneseness. A fresh look at Nippon Jindon through maternal filial affection. So again, he would argue that essentially the key aspect of Japaneseness is that Japan is a maternal culture as opposed to a paternal culture. And there's a number of expressions of that. One of them being the hollow center. Masao Takenaka, who was a Japanese contextual thinker. He was a student of Niebuhr, but he wrote a book called When the Bamboo Bends, which is about what Christianity could look like in Japan, and he likened the Japanese spirit to bamboo. So we have, again, point being that the hollow center idea is really pivotal to that. Western Christianity is very like backbone, which means you live or die on something, right? You have the buck stops here approach to things, whereas if you're hollow centered, you bend, but you don't really break, right? So Takenaka argues that that's something that is distinctly Japanese and can be used positively. It's been a while since I've read it, and for me, it's just kind of like, let's put a like a bookmark there and come back to it. But I think that some of the other things I've read that fleshes that out more in Nishitani makes me feel comfortable with trying to pursue contextualization in a way that, according to Nishitani, the Japanese, these kinds of thought processes more likely influenced Shinto than vice versa. And so, yeah, that's another guy that I'd like to interview. if I can. But yeah, for me, I think there's a lot of stuff that we can do to try and reach Japanese in a way that makes sense to them, and that's the point of the contextualization. That doesn't mean making Shinto as the Old Testament for Japanese people, which is kind of the most extreme things you'll hear in maybe the more extreme versions of contextualization. That's not what we're thinking. We're not saying that, Shinto's holy scriptures are the Japanese Old Testament for a couple of reasons. One is because it's not a good idea, and the other is because there is no Japanese, there's the Kojiki and stuff, but that's not that's descriptive, right? It's not prescriptive in that you shall do this and you shall not do that. I think I'm getting off on a tangent, but yeah, all that to say, I appreciated these articles, which you can read on Christianity Today. Again, that's Kazusa Okaya, who is a PhD candidate at Durham University, interviewing Yoichi Yamaguchi, who is at Tokyo Christian University. I had a conversation with another new friend in the Japanese Christianity field, who I hope to introduce you guys to in the next 6 months. And something that he said about the whole topic that I thought was just a really good place to land the plane here is that Christianity transforms Japanese culture. So even where we are trying to start from Japanese principles, we want to land in a place where Jesus transforms the Japanese culture into something that really honors him. So that doesn't mean uncritically accepting things, but it also means, not uncritically accepting Western expressions as parts of Christianity, right? So in the same way that there are many aspects of Western culture that have been transformed by Christianity, not all. There's a lot of Western culture that is very critiquable because it's not transformed by Christianity, right? But I think there's a lot that's beautiful in the Japanese culture, and to see that transformed into something even more beautiful, as Japanese Christians live out their faith, is really cool, and really, I think the hope and goal of this. So thanks for being on this journey with us. Hope these ideas and thoughts are helpful to you as you think about how you can reach your Japanese friends in a way that makes sense to them. Thanks.